Stella Noxfleury is one of those characters who never got to truly exist, and yet somehow manages to mean something. Not because of how much time we spent with her, because we didn't, and certainly not because her story landed, because it never got the chance to, but because even in the little promotional material we have, she represented a very particular promise. For those of you who have been watching any of my Kingdom Hearts content, such as my theories over the years, many of you might not know this, but one of the quiet engines behind a lot of my speculation regarding the Nameless Star had not just been to do with her true identity, it's been Stella. And I want to ensure it's clear what I mean when I say that, because I think it's very relevant to why I'm even making this video at all. You see, a lot of my older theory videos, some of the earliest on my channel in fact, were built on ideas about the Nameless Star's true identity, mostly her name. Now whether you or even I fully buy those theories in their entirety anymore is a separate matter. But the thing I never really properly communicated in those videos was that the motivation behind a lot of my reasoning was always the same. I wanted to see this specific character, this Stella that we were introduced to in Versus, actually realized on the screen. And please understand that I do mean Stella, not Lunafreya. Not a soft-spoken, sacrificial lamb whose primary narrative function is to be mourned, Stella. Because if we're going to invoke the name Stella in Kingdom Hearts discourse, if the community is going to casually say, well, the Nameless Star is basically Stella, or Viren Rex is a reimagining of Versus, then I don't think we should cherry pick the aesthetic and throw away the substance. You can't just keep the name and discard the meaning behind it. But when I look at a lot of the Kingdom Hearts conversation around the Nameless Star, it has a habit of reducing her down to, oh, she's Yozora's love interest, just like Stella was to Noctis. And if that's all you think Stella was, then yeah, I can see why you'd simplify her like that. But that reading is exactly what I think misses the point. And it's why I don't feel like the community is fully appreciating what it's doing when it invokes Stella as a reference. Because the reason Stella captured so many people's attention, the reason she certainly captured my attention, wasn't simply that she was a love interest. Final Fantasy has always had love interests. What was new and interesting was that Stella represented a romantic interest and also an antagonist. She was described as a character who could be part of the tragedy not as a passive symbol, but as an active force at odds with us. Now, just for anyone who thinks I'm overly romanticizing the past, Nomura himself had this to say about her in an old interview from back in 2008. He's asked if the Skirt Girl is the main female character that fought Noctis previously. He answered that she is, and interestingly, he says people who have seen his work before will know that there has been descriptions on the female characters. Now, I believe that this is him just referring to the criticism that he might have gotten for his female characters even back then. So he then clarifies that she is the first female character that will stand out from all previous Final Fantasies. Now after that, he's asked if this means she's a rebel from the enemy side and a capable lady, to which he replies that he can't fully answer that, but that she is ladylike, not the humble type, but more of a character that moves according to her beliefs. Now when you consider these statements, and you take a look at how Stella was characterized when she was reworked into Lunafreya, you can very easily begin to understand why people such as myself have always been a bit salty about this subject. It's even worsened by the fact that we had footage showing her that blatantly made it clear this was the intended direction for her character. This one piece of footage here, where she draws her weapon and faces off against Noctis on equal footing, even the scene of the signing ceremony when they're meeting for the first time and they speak about XIII and the strange light that they both see, you can still see some of these differences. See, in 15, they kept the differences like how Lunafreya is often wearing white whilst Noctis is usually wearing black. But it lacks the same meaning because they weren't a duality in the way they were intended to be in Versus. Rather than oppose one another, they were promised from the start, and the relationship was the typical tale of childhood friends become lovers with no sort of conflict between each other. It's a tale we've seen countless times in Japanese media. People often point to the Romeo and Juliet parallel with Versus, that whole two sides, tragic lovers, fate pulling them apart sort of vibe, and I love that. I still love it as an idea for Final Fantasy. But what made Stella fascinating to me wasn't simply that she was basically Juliet in this equation. This was Romeo and Juliet, but if Juliet was initially an active antagonist. And to me, that was so much more interesting, because it means the romance is something that has to be won, or at least earned through conflict and understanding, not delivered by prophecy. Now I'm not saying Stella was going to be the final boss. Final Fantasy usually has a larger power behind everything, and we know enough about Versus to know that it wouldn't be Stella. But the framer suggested she would have a romance with Noctis that had some actual friction. And I mean, this sort of idea of her being a fighter was so deeply ingrained into her character's construction that it's even in her name. Stella Nox Flore. Now, many of you will know that Stella is Italian and Latin for star, and Nox is Latin for night. But the part we often skip over is Flore. Flore is in reference to a fencing foil. This is why Stella specifically wielded a rapier, because as Nomura said, she was meant to be ladylike, and so naturally giving her a fencing sort of style evokes elegance and grace, even when violent. So her very name was tied to even the weapon she wielded, and that's the part that gets lost when people flatten her down to Noctis' girl, because now compare what happened in Final Fantasy XV. Lunafreya inherited the Nox Flore name, but she doesn't embody what that name originally meant. Instead, she becomes an oracle, and the oracle role is not really some new type of archetype when you really think about it. In fact, it's one of the most familiar lanes Final Fantasy has, and even her iconography reflects that. She's associated with a trident, so she's more ceremonial and symbolic and more like a priestess, not a duelist. So you end up in this weird place where she has the name, but not its original meaning. In my opinion, it becomes derivative more than inspired. Like, okay, yeah, the branding survived, but the original conceptual flavour didn't. Now, to be fair, and I do want to be fair here, Hajime Tabata did say Lunafreya was intended to have agency. He talked about her being strong-willed and determined with her own objectives, claiming that she had a stronger personality than even Stella. He's quoted specifically saying that she's a much stronger and more determined character, and even went so far as to frame it as though Noctis might be the one who needs protecting. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, Tabata. Did we play the same game? Is this the game you shipped? Because did you guys play that game? Maybe I missed something. Maybe they sent me the wrong copy, and everyone else who streamed and did playthroughs of the game. Yeah, maybe. Now, in all seriousness, I understand he likely fully intended for this to be the case, but I played that game. I watched Kingsglaive and all the teasers and the trailers and even the little anime they did, and whilst I can see where he was going for with this, and I do believe it was really his intention in some way, the execution just didn't land. In the final product that we got, Lunafreya just didn't have enough live presence for that agency to hit the way it was promised. She's treated more like a symbol the world reveres than a person the story follows. The narrative insists she's this huge character, and yet we spend so little time with her that she functionally just becomes the one who suffers so that the protagonist can keep on going. Like, seriously, come on, how in any reality is that more powerful as a concept than Stella? Yeah, I get it, we never actually got to see how Stella turned out, maybe Nomura would have messed it up, sure, but conceptually, till this day, she's more interesting than what they did with Lunafreya for the simple fact that we've not only seen Lunafreya's archetype done before in Final Fantasy, I would argue we've seen it done much better. If you want a female summoner type of character with real presence and weight, we don't have to look much further than Yuna in Final Fantasy X. But I mean, we can even go back to Rydia in Final Fantasy IV.
Coward. You're a man, aren't you? A grown man! Stop crying. I have.
Rydia.
And heck, why not throw in Garnet and Aiko from Final Fantasy IX? So Lunafreya ends up in this unfortunate position. She inherits Stella's last name and some surface echoes, but she's not living the Flore meaning. And she's also placed in a lane the franchise has already explored with more impact. And that's what has me a little bit concerned about the Nameless Star in Kingdom Hearts. I don't want a repeat of this same dynamic, because when I look at the Nameless Star right now, with the limited scenes we've got of her, if I'm gonna be honest guys, I don't see Stella in her characterization. In the scenes we have, she comes across gentle, soft-spoken and helpful, which is fine, but she's already framed as a damsel in distress, which is much more Lunafreya leaning than it is Stella. And as I said at the start, even when you look at the conversations surrounding her, it all points towards this same idea. People talk about her like her whole identity is simply the girl Yozora loves, and I can't really blame any of you because so far that's pretty much what the games have shown us. But if she stays in that lane, if that's what Kingdom Hearts does with her long term, then I think calling her Stella is basically just cosplay. It's just an aesthetic being projected onto her. It's taking the name because it sounds cool and because it ties into our Versus nostalgia, while forgetting the actual appeal attached to the original character. At that point, it'd be more accurate to just say she's basically Lunafreya in Kingdom Hearts. But I will say I do see potential ways that this could be avoided. We know that she's dealing with a situation of identity theft and that she does wield some sort of powerful abilities. So she does have power, and I have always said that she most likely holds an important position in Quadratum, just like the original Stella did in Versus, which is most likely the reason why someone wanted to steal her identity to begin with. So the ingredients are there, and one idea I've expressed occasionally in the comments of my old videos but never actually in a video is this: maybe the antagonistic energy I'm hoping for doesn't belong to the Nameless Star herself, but to whoever stole her identity. In an old theory video I did some years ago on the Nameless Woman being an enemy, and in the video I released just last year about future Kingdom Hearts boss fights, I kept pushing this idea that whoever is wearing her identity will most likely be a hostile force. Now it could turn out that in this reimagining of Versus, instead of Stella as the Nameless Star herself being the actual antagonist, it could be the person that's masquerading as her is the one who brings that conflict. The person who took her name and everything about her could be the one who carries that Stella-shaped antagonism in Kingdom Hearts 4. This could be a compromise we could go with, and to be honest, it's looking like it's the more likely outcome. But if it is, well, for me, it still isn't the same thing, because Stella's appeal wasn't an antagonist wearing Stella's face. Stella's appeal was that she was her own person, and it was the idea of this conflict with her that existed alongside her romance that set it apart. If the antagonism is outsourced entirely to this identity thief, while the real girl remains only a victim waiting to be recovered, then they wouldn't really be honouring what made Stella compelling. If they want to make her Stella coded, then at some point she needs to become an active participant in the conflict. Not just someone who gets restored, but someone who makes decisions that complicate the story. Someone who can oppose the protagonist's goals, even temporarily, because she believes in something different. Someone who isn't just precious to Yozora, but consequential to the world around her. And just to be clear, I'm not demanding she stays an antagonist forever. In fact, if they want to maintain the sort of Romeo and Juliet parallel, then she can't. But if there's no sort of ideological collision or a sense of the romance being risky because she's on the other side, then what's the point of invoking Stella at all? At that stage, stop calling her Stella and just call her the Nameless Star and let her be whatever Kingdom Hearts wants her to be. What I'm basically saying is, don't use a name with a legacy if you're not willing to carry the weight that that legacy implies. Now I can imagine some people will argue, well listen Next Gen, Versus was never released, so we don't actually know what Stella would have become. And yeah, that's kind of true, and that's exactly why I'm trying to be careful with my wording here. Like, I'm not going to pretend that we have a full script for Stella's arc, because we don't, but we do have the framing. We do have the communicated premise, we do have Nomura's own description of her, and we do have the way the trailers chose to present her. Our love for Stella, and by extension our interest in her being reimagined in Kingdom Hearts, is based on those original depictions and ideas of her. And let's be honest, Kingdom Hearts is one of the few series that actually has a powerful history with names and identities, and I think many of you may agree with me when I say that the series is often at its best when it treats those things as meaningful aspects of someone that shapes who they are. When I look at the current setup we have with the Nameless Star, her identity being snatched and her sense of self held by another in her place, I see the sort of conflict that could absolutely produce a Stella level character, but the story has to commit to it. So if Kingdom Hearts is really going to pick up that torch, if Vir and Rex is really going to echo Versus in more than just vibes, then it needs to carry the hard parts too. Not just the names, not just the aesthetics, and not just the nostalgia. Give me Stella, not just in name, but in significance.